Well, I was born in Boston in 1917. We lived on the second highest hill in Boston, which gave very, very beautiful views of Boston and distant landscapes. I was in junior high school. I won a scholarship to the Boston Museum. Walking in the museum, and Boston Museum has a very great collection of art, and that's where I really fell in love with art. I went to Boston University, and then a year and a half later, I transferred to George Washington University because I wanted to go to college away from home. So I went back to Boston University, and but I quit it in my fourth year. Again, wanted to be an artist. Once I decided to go to art school, I spent a year going to the Corcoran School of Art, working morning, afternoon, and evenings. Well, in 1940, I went to New York to go to the Art Students League and studied with George Gross and Reginald Marsh. And in 1942, I went into the Army, where I worked as in the combat engineers, dealing with mines demolition and booby traps. After the war, I spent a year in Provincetown, Massachusetts, painting and working at art. And then I decided I should go to art school. In 1947, I started studying at the Amédée Ozenfant School because I found that by going to school I would be able to earn money under the GI Bill. So I went and studied with Amédée Ozenfant for 2 years, and then studied with Hans Hofmann for 2 years, winter and summer. Now, this is another optical work done in 1949. These were started about 1946 when I was a student at the Ozenfant School. In it, I was trying to create dynamic energies on a flat surface so that the forms and colors would come forward and go back in a very dynamic staccato way. And but the picture plane itself would remain, in a sense, in the center of it. Now, this particular picture, plus some others, were exhibited at the Museum of Non-Objective Art. Now, this is a work done in 1946, again, when I was at the Ozenfant School. For one thing, I never really could belong to a group. I belonged to no religion, no organizations. There was just one organization, the Artists Club, which in a way wasn't a club. It was just called the club, simply a place where you met people, but there was no organized grouping of people or ideas. Things were sort of different. For the advanced artists, you were pretty much separated from the rest of the art world. There were only about 3 galleries that showed any modern art at all, and you could always go and see all the galleries you're interested in one afternoon. And so the 9th Street show was, in a sense, the first time that this work, that a group of artists who originally didn't know each other very much sort of came together and exhibited. From 1952, it's called number 7, and this was a work in which I tried to create an image that wasn't an image. And it's all white, and it's used lead white and sand on the picture so that there are little shapes and movements that come through the picture. Now this is a work painted in 1960 called City Lights, and this relates somewhat to the early optical paintings that I did in 1947 to 49. And there's a grid established in the picture, and within it rows of circles and then rows of rectangles and various movements swirling around. Now the work was started by having it on the floor, and paint was applied to it in many different ways, then attacked with palette knife and brushes. Now I've always had difficulty in finishing works because to me, and I think to most artists, there is no absolute idea as to just when a picture is finished. It's more a question of waiting, thinking, and permitting the picture, in a sense, to finish itself. No matter what your idea was in dealing with it, there is a certain point when the picture starts to take over, and the picture, in a sense, tells you what to do. And as a result, you keep working on it, the picture suggests you have some yellow there, some red there, some blue somewhere else. And then it suggests more black, and then more scraping, and so on. So this is a very lengthy process, and finally the artist is sort of floating, in a sense, in the middle of the painting, not knowing exactly what the picture is anymore, not even knowing what its subject is, but just painting and sensing finally that you must stop. I worked with these wind sculptures for about 25 to 30 years. And over the period of time, I would do some. Sometimes I would do quite a number. Others, I would just do 1 or 2. And I think about 1980, I did this head, and I find it very amusing. Now, this work is done in 1984, and it's a self-portrait, charcoal drawing. By having this wheel on top, it brings a sense of silliness into a kind of seriousness, which makes it much more meaningful. Now, the image is set on a curving aluminum panel, and when you look at it from the front, it looks one way. When you look from slightly to the left or to the right, you get a totally different image. And so it seems to show different aspects of the person, in this case myself. Now, this is one of a group of sculptures I did in 1968. This was after the Vietnam War got started, and I came across a bag of these little toy soldiers that were left from my son's toys when he was very young. And I started playing around with them, and I started putting them together with heat, and suddenly I got the idea of a war plant. So the title of this is War Plant. So I have these toy soldiers all linked one to the other, all going into the earth, in other words, going into death. And yet, at first look, it looks like a real plant, a kind of strange desert plant. And most people who come into my house actually think they are plants. Now, this painting was done very recently in 1991, and it's again these fragmented figures sort of confronting the world. The title of this work is 7 Up, and I love the idea of these figures, each sort of compartmentalized within himself, and they're both male and female, and there's a kind of primitive posturing, which to me is humorous. Now, this work is called Me and My Shadow. Trying to show segmented man and woman and their reflections. And we all have, various selves. We have a front self and a back self, and we have the mirror reflections. We have many different kinds of reflections, and that's something that we all experience in our daily life. Now, this work is done. It's using rollers, palette knife brushes, and various other things. So it's almost a print, or perhaps, depending on how you define it, it is a print, but with many, many sections. Now, this is a recent picture in which I've tried to destroy the feeling of stability that a frame would give to a picture. And these images are floating and will be blown by the wind if there is any. And these two hands are made of wires, and you get the feeling of all these heads peering out, strangely looking at you, and yet they're insubstantial, they're floating, and for me, it creates a kind of haunting image.